Photo World, today is the day. If you are listening to this before 12 noon here on August 5th, good timing. We have our first ever webinar for Taking Talk Pics. I will be hosting it and broadcasting it live to you, Photo World. I want you to tune in, be a part of the webinar, send your feedback, send your information, send your questions to me, and we can sort things out, and I can tell you a little bit more about the show, give you a little bit more insight. And I got a few little tips for you, Photo World, so be sure to tune in, but you can't do it without registering. You got to get to takingtalkpics.com, hit the webinar tab, find the links below, click to register, and enter your email. You will get the information on where to be and how to get there for the webinar. But again, August 5th, today, 12 noon, I will see you there, and happy shooting. Takeandtalkpics.com. I am Rob Kruger, and this is episode 56 with wedding photographer Andre LaCour.
You don't have time to figure out how you're going to light it. You need to know how you're going to light it. You need to know that it's going to work.
Today's featured guest is Andre LaCour. Andre, are you ready to rock today?
You bet.
Awesome. Andre is a Chicago-based wedding and portrait photographer. His award-winning work has been published in many magazines, such as Chicago Style Weddings, Wedding Guide Chicago, Chicago Social Brides, and Rangefinder, not to mention the countless online publications as well. As a member of PPA, Andre has certificates as a Craftsman and Master Photographer. Andre, welcome to Take and Talk Pics.
Thanks so much, Rob. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've just scratched the surface, kind of told some of the highlights of some of your successes, but we really want to break down the story. Can you start us off with telling us who you are and a little bit more about your business?
Sure. I've been photographing now for 32 years in the Chicago market, primarily weddings, but also doing portraits, some corporate work, a little bit of fashion that sometimes comes my way. And really just, as I'm sure you know, it's a referral-based business, and that's the one, it is a painfully slow way to build a business, but in these times of, the last couple of years where we're in a bit of a recession, and then currently, when we're kind of coming out of it, but there's so many photographers out there, and so many magazines, and so many websites, and there's just how does a couple choose a photographer? Well, for many brides, it's referrals from other brides, from venues, from planners, and so forth, and so it really becomes important, your reputation, and doing a quality job. I've always approached this as something that is my career, so I try to always look long term at what is the best thing for the client, and hope that that leads to their referrals in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and the referral is the part of the business you want to get to. I think every photographer wants to get to where that's the basis of their market, because paying for marketing is just so expensive and so competitive and difficult to get to be a piece of it, which is understandable at some portions of a business track, but once you get to that referral place, oh my gosh, it's so much better. It's so clean.
It is. And, but, I always feel like, for myself, I feel like I'm never there than there being anywhere.
Right.
I always feel like, whether it's technique, whether it's marketing, whether it's the referrals, I feel like if you don't keep moving forward and trying to improve what you do, whether it's your packaging or your presentation, or I just feel like there's always at least one or two levels above wherever you're at, and if you're not striving to get there, someone else will. So competition is good in that sense, that I think it forces people to improve what they do, what they offer.
Yeah.
Or you will, get left behind.
Yeah, for sure.
I think, I don't know if you, I forget what one movie it is where he says, he's talking to his girlfriend, they're sort of like sharks. If they don't keep moving forward, die. And I think, I think business is like that as well.
Well, and maybe just what you were saying is what keeps you motivated, but I like to break it down to like a quote or a mantra, something you live by on a day-to-day basis for your business or your life, just keeps you pushing forward. Do you have something to share with Photo World?
One that's always in the back of my head is, and I can't remember exactly how it goes, but, if it's broke, fix it. If it's not broke, break it and rebuild it better. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think you can get in a rut where, you feel like you're delivering, a quality product and a quality service, and you stop trying to make it better. And I just have that mentality of it's never quite good enough. Mind you that this mantra will lead to you being permanently unsatisfied with everything. So
Yeah,
I'm not suggesting it as a method for lifelong happiness, but it is a method for improving and not sort of sitting back and resting on what you've done or what you've accomplished in the past.
right.
And in brides, when a bride calls that hasn't met me, and it sounds like a relatively young bride, if they ask how long have I been photographing, I always say, over 10 years, which is true. But in the culture that we're at, if I say 32 years, it's a negative.
Yeah.
A lot of young brides say, oh my God, this guy's probably in a wheelchair. I don't want to deal with this guy. So then once they meet you and see that you in fact are not in a wheelchair and that you're vibrant and so forth, then it's not an issue. But initially, I think a lot of brides would be, predisposed to hiring, someone who's in their 20s or their 30s. And you've got to get them, for me, I feel like I have to get them to the point of seeing the images in person and also meeting in person to really get them, to make that connection with them.
Well, I'm 28 years old, and that's the same way for me to get my wedding clients, is I have to be in front of them because pictures will say one thing, and that's great, and seeing prices online, fine, that'll make them help get a decision out of it, but the best part is just really meeting the person who's going to be spending so much time with them, and that's where it really changes for me, I think. So I don't know if the experience matters all that much, of whether it be 6 years like me or 32 like you, because it seems like we both have to get to the same point to not convince brides, but let them understand what's really involved. So
absolutely, and it doesn't matter, I don't think, to a client. If you've only been in business maybe 1 or 2 years, might raise some concerns. But
yeah.
I think once you hit 5, 6 years, in their mind, that's as good as 10 or 20 or 30. And hopefully in their mind better, because I would think that that necessitates that you're more current than someone who's been doing it longer. So it's interesting, and I think you have to take a look at how you you present yourself and work however many years of experience to your particular advantage.
True. And thinking back to the beginning of these 32 years you've been doing this, what sparked your interest enough to pursue photography as a career?
Well, that's a great question. I had an interest in photography, and I took a class in high school, and I really enjoyed it and did well with it. And at the time, they only had the one class. Well, the instructor offered me, to be the lab assistant, which they didn't. There really wasn't that position. He said, "Well, why don't you be a lab assistant next semester, and you can mix chemicals, you can hang out, and you can make some prints, do this kind of thing." And he was a really good instructor, and I kind of kept in touch with him. And while I was in college, I was working a couple nights a week going to a local college, and he said, "Hey, why don't you learn to be a wedding photographer?" He himself had started doing that, and he said, "You can come work for the company that I'm working for. I'll get you trained up and sort of vouch for you, because at that time they really didn't typically take people at my age. And that's where it started. And after I was living at home and photographing weddings, and every Saturday the ritual would repeat itself, where I'm frantically getting ready and putting the equipment in the car. There's no GPS in those days. So we had a giant map book and all the directions. And I would take tell the parents goodbye and run to the kitchen, grab the Tuxo-Bismol, take a couple swings out of it, and run out of the house. So after about 2 months of this, my dad comes to me and he says, "So, how's the photography thing going?" Mom, it's going pretty well, actually. He says, "Well, it seems like you're really nervous about it." And I'm like, I would be terrified until I got to the bride's house and started photographing. I was just, terrified that something was going to happen. I would find the house, or that they would somehow be unreceptive to me, or what have you. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But once I would get in there and start working, that everything would fall into place, and I enjoyed it. And really, it just kind of one thing led to another from that point. I worked at several large studios in Chicago at that time, and ending up managing one of them, and managing a smaller one, and then leapfrogging to one of the largest, and training their staff of photographers, as well as doing weddings myself. And it was a great experience, and it's really amazing how much photography, the market, and brides have changed throughout those years. It's a very different ballgame these days, but I think that in general, the level of photography has gone up dramatically, and I think there used to be more of a standardization. There were less really bad photography, and but also less really good photography.
Yeah.
And so I think now that there's a really broad market, and there's a lot of photographers doing really interesting creative work.
Are you at liberty to say what studios you were managing back then?
I don't know that probably wouldn't want to just name those names, but
it's fine. You don't have to.
They're mostly out of business these days. So many studios have come and gone.
Yeah.
With brides, I think now they want to meet the photographer, mm-hmm. and have that relationship one-on-one, as opposed to hiring a studio that's just going to assign one of their staff photographer to the wedding.
Right. And there are a lot of those big box studios in the Chicago market, and in most major cities have them, which
right.
they're fitting for some. But you and I are just in a totally different kind of game with it, and how we approach things. And in the end, it's weddings and pictures, and people want them. And thinking back a little bit to that, feeling nervous before getting there, and then lifting the camera and realizing I'm in my element. This is me doing what I do. We all kind of get that way, I think, at some point, where you just get so comfortable with the camera being your safeguard or your relief, however you want to look at it, that, hey, this
right.
is my thing. I can do this, But, that's the beauty of photography and the fun parts of it, especially shooting. But when we talk about like the business side, there's good times too, but there's also bad ones. Can you recall a failure moment, something that really had you learn a big lesson? Even if it was something small, you still learn a big lesson out of it. Just a time when something didn't go well.
Yeah, there was. There's one episode that I will never forget. It was at the time I was photographing medium format. So, as most of your listeners are probably aware, there would be a 120 format and 220, and basically it just means the film is twice as long. So, right. On a 120 roll, you can take 12 exposures. On a 220 roll, you can take 24 if you're shooting, square format. So it was one of these great weddings where where the bride is super excited to have me photograph her wedding, and just telling the bridesmaids, how they're going to be so creative and different. And really, I love hearing that after the wedding. But, during the wedding, it always makes me feel, I don't know, a little self-conscious or something. So anyway, as we're photographing, I feel that something isn't right, but I can't put my finger on it. And I take a couple Polaroids to check my lighting and the camera and everything's functioning. Mm-hmm. So this continues throughout the day until the reception, and the bride and groom had a little stopover somewhere else, so I got to the reception before them. This is back in the day of setting up a portrait backdrop and lighting, so I got all that set up. And then I look down and for the first time see that the film that I've been shooting is all 120 instead of 220 that it was supposed to be, which means that I took 12 exposures, and then the camera would allow you to continue to take another 12. Oh, no. But you're not actually photographing on that last 12. So you've got 12 that are on film and 12 that are on air. And so I have half of everything I shot that day. And so frantically, I ripped through the boxes of film, 120, 120, 120, 120, 120, 120. They're all 120. So, and of course, this is the thing that was nagging me that something was wrong. Is after you take the 12th picture, and when you crank the camera again, there's no tension on it, and so it feels slightly differently. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason that day, it just wasn't, clicking, pardon the pun, and I didn't realize until that very moment. So the DJ was a friend of mine, and he had actually provided the lead and got me the client. I went over to him. He's like, "What's wrong?" He goes, "I look like I could pass out." I go, "I think I might." And I told him what happened. He said, "Well, when we get here, just tell them something, anything, and redo the family photos, just to be sure." So I do that, but they don't want to redo the family pictures. They said, "Oh, I'm sure it'll be fine." And I'm like, "Well, I really, I definitely recommend that we should do them." And they're like, "No, just have a drink." They're very, very laid back, right? So just have a drink, relax, everything will be fine. So in those days, in 10 days to get the film back from the lab. Finally, the film gets back, and by some miracle, and the fact that I tend to shoot heavy, basically everything is there. I've got the ceremony, the coming down the aisle. There's one family group that we did at the beginning of the day at the getting ready location that's not there, and all the cool artsy stuff. There's a shot of it, So the bride and groom, I said, "Hey, I'll pay for the tuxes and the dresses and the flowers, whatever you want to redo that shot." And they're like, "Oh, that'd be great. We would like that." So I took care of that, gave them, I can't remember now, I think half their money back. They're like, "You don't have to do that. Everything was fine." I said, "If you guys were really jerks, you would make me do it. And so I just feel like good karma just to do it."
Right.
I'm glad that it all worked out, but and I didn't tell them that it was, my stupidity. I said that there might have been a problem with the film, this and that. So in the end, they were happy. I still made a few dollars on the wedding, but over the course of the next couple of years, they referred 2 or 3 brides to me that booked. And I just feel that, there's karma, and that if you screw someone over at some point, it comes back to you. And I felt so relieved to have dodged the bullet of my incompetence at that point, that, I felt like it was an atonement to give them that money back.
Yikes, yeah.
And I never made that same mistake again. And I've always told photographers I've trained and that I've worked with, if you can just never make the same mistake twice, you eventually will run out of mistakes.
Right.
And you can't help but improve if you learn from each mistake and don't repeat it. And that's just something I've tried to live by.
Well, and that's all it is. To grow, you have to change, and change comes really quickly when you make a mistake, you know?
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, and moving into the hopefully more positive side for Photo World out there listening, you know, we do want to get better, and I really appreciate you breaking that story down for us, because it was so detailed, it was so real. It's like I was right there, my heart started pounding when you're telling me this. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's set to 220, you're on 120, oh my goodness, that's insane. And nobody wants to go through that. And these
Right.
days with digital, hopefully we don't have that much of a issue, but it's nice that, you know, pulled through for you, and you handled it well, which you're right. I believe it fully, that karma, or whatever you want to call it, something is out there, and it works, that if you're doing the right thing, because we know right from wrong in our gut, if you're doing the right thing, whatever
Right.
it is, follow that, and you'll be fine in the end. But
Exactly.
as we're moving forward with our businesses, we want to grow and we want to succeed. Is there something you could share with Photo World that you think, you know, one little tip would lead to growth and success in a business, regardless of their current level?
Other than I think constantly trying to improve, constantly trying to improve your client experience, and trying to think long term. I know, you know, like as an example, I know that there's quite a few photographers that will photograph a wedding and just give the client a disc or a USB drive of all the images.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, obviously there's a demand for that. There's a lot of clients that want that. But I believe that more so it's a lot of clients that really don't understand why they shouldn't want that and why they should have a professionally produced album. And I do believe that in the long term, giving clients finished product, finished albums, finished portraits for the wall, where, you know, they're printed properly under your supervision or approval, and, you know, not at Costco. You know,
Right.
you take the time to perfect your techniques, and the day of the wedding, you know,
And they go fix it with a
being
beautiful
creative.
color cast, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You know, so how is that really in the client's best interest?
Right.
I believe that you're not giving them a full service. And I'm not, you know, I'll be honest with you, do I sometimes do it? Sure. If I meet with a client and, you know, they don't want or can't afford the, you know, what I would call full service, especially if it's a slow date, am I going to say no to, you know, a client that wants to hire me for a substantial, you know, wage, and only give them the drive? Yeah, you know, I'll do it, but I will tell them everything that I'm telling you, which is that, you know, I honestly don't believe it's in your best interest. And after the wedding, you know, we can produce an album or any of these other things. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But it is the minority by far of the jobs that I do. I really, I'd rather make a very modest profit on delivering an album than to not deliver the album. And it is extra work, obviously, but I really believe that what's going to get you customer loyalty and get you those referrals is giving them finished work that is of the level that you want it to be as a photographer.
Those clients that truly work with you from start to actual finish. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I think there's, I mean, years ago, I was doing the shoot and burn thing. It was just so much easier. It was catering to everybody, right? And just this past couple of years, I've put in some sort of print product into each package that if you're booking me, you have to get something print-wise. And I always encourage more, because that's the true way to enjoy a picture on a wall instead of on your phone. I mean, come on. So,
right.
You know, put it up
Absolutely.
where it's worth seeing, or put it on in a book where it's worth taking out on your anniversary. And I totally agree. So I forced it on my clients. Like, if they don't want that stuff, I'm like, well, I'm sorry, it comes with the package, the end. So,
Right.
It's
And there's
turned
so
things
many,
around a lot.
yeah, there's so many interesting, cool products now. You know, metal prints, wood prints, canvas, acrylic, watercolor. I mean, you know, and most clients haven't seen those things done well.
Right.
And so I think it's important to find what fits your style and what you like, and offer that to your clients. And, you know, include, like I say, include some print, something, you know, in your packages.
For sure. And to shift gears a little bit from the analog showing prints and getting people into that and that true display, we're running businesses and we're in this super crazy, fast-paced, social media-driven digital world, you know? Is there an app or an internet resource that you could share with Photo World that you think they could benefit from knowing about?
You know, I have to say that is something that I want to, that's sort of next on my list of improvements.
Yeah.
I have been inactive. You know, I obviously have a website. My blog has been inactive for a long time. I had someone that was helping me with it, and they moved out of state, and the life got busy, and the business was busy, and I haven't been keeping up with it. I post to Facebook, of course, but I have not been active on Instagram and Pinterest, and so those are some avenues that actually I'm going to be enhancing in my own business.
I totally know the best app you're talking about right now. It's time. You know, look at the clock and realize what you can do with it or don't do with it, and make the decisions.
That's exactly correct. And we're also looking at you know, possibly bringing in you know, maybe a high school or college aged person who can take on a little bit of those activities.
Yeah.
It's you know, every business goes through its phases, and right now we're pretty busy. Not busy enough to have a full-time person helping my wife and myself,
Mm-hmm.
but a little busier than the two of us can keep up with without help. So yeah, so that's kind of the avenue that we're looking at, and then getting more involved on the different platforms.
Yeah. Yeah, very nice. And it's great that you're here on the podcast today to share with Photo World out there, so I appreciate you stopping by.
Pleasure.
Well, we've been like throwing down value bombs all over the place and just flying through. It feels super fast, and we only got through a few questions, really, but I just want to keep it tight to our time, and I really appreciate you sharing with us. But before you go, could you share with Photo World one parting piece of guidance, and then the best way that we can reach you, whether it be your website or some sort of social media, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, absolutely. The website is AndreLaCour.com, ANDRELACOUR, and there's an email link on there. And so, yeah, if I can be of help to any of your listeners, by all means, be happy to.
For sure. Can you share with a parting piece of guidance with Photo World today?
I think I'm going to still something that you said, actually, which was, you know, in your gut when it's right, and I think that's very true. I think when you, if you're meeting with a client that doesn't seem like a good fit, you know it in your gut, and you know, and if you are doing something in your business that doesn't feel quite right, I think that you really do know it, and you kind of try and justify it, or taking a shortcut, and really, what one of my favorite quotes, and you've probably heard this before, everybody wants to be a rock star photographer.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to learn the chords. And, you know, that's the truth. Of a lot of younger photographers that I meet, don't really take the time to learn the business or to learn their technique, to practice. When you're out on the wedding, there's rarely enough time. You know, it's always a race against the clock. So when you have a visual idea, and you've got to squeeze it in before the bride and groom get introduced, you know, and you have 4 minutes or something, you don't have time to figure out how you're going to light it. You need to know how you're going to light it. You need to know that it's going to work, and that comes from practice.
Right.
And so I think a lot of times that gets shortcut. Back in back in the day, I would, take all sorts of practice shots and write them all down, and the person would hold a little chart, roll one, frame one, and you test all these different things, and you have to wait. And now it's so much easier with digital to do that sort of thing. There's really no excuse not to practice and have those different techniques down, and so that when it comes game time and you have only a few minutes to execute something, that you can do it and to the full amount of your abilities, and capture that image and create that image for the bridegroom in a quick, efficient way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's awesome, and you pulled it out of what I said, and I feel like I just learned something out of what you said. So I love the back and forth here today. And
sounds good.
We'll have all the information, your website and social links and things like that on the show notes page over at takingtalkpics.com. So that way you, photo world, can get in touch with Andre and follow what he's doing and see the work he produces and the accomplishments he has. So it's all going to be there for you. If you can't find him directly, we will have the information on the site there. But Andre, I cannot thank you enough for your time today and sharing such great value. Photo World thanks you, and happy shooting.
Thanks, Rob. Great to be on the show. Appreciate it.
Photo World, are you looking for a way to rebrand your business? Or maybe you just haven't found the perfect look to get it started? 99 Designs offers everything you need as far as logo design, business card design, even website design, setting you up for the right strategy and having that perfect look from start to finish. Head to takingtalkpics.com under the resource tab and hit our affiliates page. From there, you can go straight to 99 Designs where you can get started today. Takeandtalkpics.com, thank you again for joining us today, and we really appreciate you stopping by. Make sure you share this with your friends and photo family out there. We'll see you next time. This is Rob Kruger. Happy shooting.